Well, it's January, and all through the world, people are feeling the post-Christmas blues, hoping that 2021 will be a much better year. I hope all of you have had a wonderful holiday, whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa. Happy holidays. December was a pretty crazy month, wasn't it? A lot of things happened. I had this whole big thing planned, but unfortunately stuff happened, including a double wrist injury. I do apologize for that. There is one thing. Even though we may all be feeling the post-holiday blues, there is one thing that will remain the same. The joys, the blessings, and the gifts of the holiday specials.
It's the most wonderful time.
No. We're not doing that. Not saying that it's a bad song. It's a great song, but right now people are feeling blue and a little stressed. So let's see if we can give them a little bit something more, I don't know, fitting.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
There we go. Ah, the holidays. Some of the best times of the year. Christmas. The most magical, the most wonderful time of the year. You get to decorate the house, trim the tree, you get to sing Christmas carols, dress up as Santa Claus, celebrate Jesus' birthday, and of course, watch those timeless and memorable Christmas specials. All 2,000 of them. Seriously, there are way too many Christmas specials out there. There are so many Christmas specials out there that it's really hard to watch all of them. I have tried so many times to watch all of them, but it's impossible. There are at least 10 new Christmas movies that are made each year. Some specials repeat lessons that you already heard in like 5 other Christmas specials. It's getting insane, guys. And of course, there's some music that will never stop because everybody creates their own versions of timeless classics, including Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Christmas song, and so forth. I mean, yeah, there are brand new Christmas songs being written, but there's unfortunately not very many. Although, I do appreciate it when someone actually tries to write something new. There are just so many Christmas songs and so many Christmas movies and specials out there. How do you find the best Christmas movies and specials to watch each year? How do you find the best versions of your favorite songs? My solution is simply that if I hear one version of a classic song that I like, I'll just listen to that version and only that version every single year. And as far as the movies are concerned, well, I stick to ones that are iconic or the most memorable. Sometimes there are movies that I see that are criminally underrated to the point where I watch those every year as well. From the end of Thanksgiving to January 1st, I watch the specials and movies that are the most meaningful. I watch movies that focus on a specific theme of the holidays, not just a movie that just says Christmas tree or Christmas this or holiday this. I just stick to ones that are iconic, memorable, and the ones that focus on a specific theme of the holidays. But you probably are getting tired of hearing the same 12 Christmas specials over and over and over again. You want something different. You want something unique. You want a list that is completely different from other people's lists. Well, you've come to the right place. I am going to present my list of the specials that I watch every single year. And this is a very selective list. There are going to be some movies and specials on here that will probably not make your list. The list is entirely personal. Your list could be whatever you want it to be. I may surprise you. I don't know, because as I'm recording this, I don't have a definitive order as to where I'm going to put these specials yet. But in the meantime, I'm going to record this to maybe think about it some more. Actually, now that I think about it, this is actually my very first top 10. My top 12, because 12 days of Christmas, 12 Christmas specials, my top 12 favorite holiday specials. Number 12, White Christmas. Here we go, starting things off on a good note here. I could have easily put Holiday Inn on the list, but even though the movie begins and ends with Christmas, it's not really a Christmas movie. at least not directly. Even though I do watch it every year, it's not necessarily 100% a Christmas movie. This movie is. This movie is a gem on all accounts. But brilliant direction by Michael Curtiz, who is actually one of my favorite directors, by the way. But stylish and elegant costumes of Edith Head, but timeless and memorable music and lyrics of Irving Berlin. And a cast that includes Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen, whose singing voice was actually dubbed with the exception of one line, and Dean Jagger. And the movie used a brand new camera technique known as VistaVision, which would later be known as 185:1 aspect ratio. So yeah, this movie is amazing. There is nothing more to say. It's just a classic. It's considered one of the best Christmas movies of all time. Well, I should probably explain why. The truth is that I've never really had a reason as to why I watch this movie every year. There's no reason. It's just part of a holiday. This movie is a part of a holiday. It's essential to watch this movie every year. It's literally called White Christmas. Well, okay, I guess I could say something about it. Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye play two army comrades who Bing saves Danny's life, and the two of them would eventually become showbiz partners, touring all across the country and becoming famous. Danny, as Phil Davis, is worried that Bing, playing Bob Wallace, is overworking himself and that he's lonely. Phil believes that Bob needs a woman in his life, so enter the Haynes sisters. The Haynes sisters are trying to avoid paying a debt, and through a train ticket misunderstanding, the four of them ride the same train heading to Vermont. They all believe that there'll be a lot of snow over in Vermont. But once they get to Vermont, not only do they find that there's no snow to be found, and not only do they find their old army general is there, but that the general has no idea that Wallace and Davis are putting on a show just for the general, despite the fact that the general did not really like him that much while they were serving in World War II. The movie is very easy to follow. There's very few moments where you'll actually scratch your head thinking what's going on. Everything's easily understandable and you're able to pick up on everything quite nicely. The cast is just good. I can't really explain why the cast works. I think maybe because this movie's not one of the classic MGM musicals. This movie was made by Paramount, and Paramount is not usually known for making really good musicals. This movie is one of those exceptions, and it works really nicely. Plus, Irving Berlin, he's one of my favorite songwriters, and the songs in here are just memorable. White Christmas, obviously, but also Count My Blessings, choreography, things happen while you're dancing. Oh my god, just so many memorable songs in this. Plus, there's a little bit of interesting trivia in this movie. Remember how I mentioned the whole VistaVision camera? Well, actually, this was the very first movie that actually utilized it, but also Alfred Hitchcock would use this camera technique a couple times in his movies, most notably North by Northwest. Another thing I should point out is that throughout the making of this movie, Rosemary Clooney and Vera Ellen did not like each other, and the costumes actually had to fit Vera Ellen's body type. There is just a lot going on in this movie. Next up is the choreography itself. I love how they stage the musical numbers. It may not be classic MGM musical good, but it's still well staged nonetheless. Oh, and let's talk about the ending. The ending, White Christmas. Well, not only are the costumes elegant and beautiful, but also, without giving too much away, the ending does wrap up the movie nicely. Kind of gives you that hopeful feeling, but at the same time gives you a sense of, wow, this is very meaningful. There are side characters in this movie, but they don't offer a whole lot to this movie though. Balance it out with some pretty good musical numbers, a good cast, and memorable songs, and you have a musical that will actually please even people who don't like musicals. Some people look at musicals and see them as distracting or annoying, but I see musicals as poetry in motion, when done right, of course. One other criticism I have of this movie outside of the uninteresting side characters is that the movie could have used more comedy. Yeah, I know it's a musical comedy, but the movie doesn't make me laugh out loud like some other comedies do. This one just seems kind of very light on comedy to me. Oh, and there's another thing I should mention. There's a notable cast member in this movie you should look out for. That right there is George Chakiris, who would later win an Oscar for playing Bernardo in West Side Story. Bernardo was a dancer in this movie. So yeah, White Christmas. A tradition to watch this movie every year, probably because it has such a charming atmosphere that you would not want to look away. It is a classic. Number 11. Home Alone. Yeah, I didn't think I was gonna put this movie on my list, but I decided, you know what, it might as well be on the list somewhere. I didn't understand the love of this movie. I rewatched it recently, and I tried to understand why people loved it so much. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's a fine movie and everything, but I didn't understand why people adored this movie so much. For so many years, I kept hearing, oh, Home Alone, I love that movie. Kevin's setting up the traps, and it's a lot like Mousetrap. Oh, I love this one. I hate to break the news to you, but if the only thing you remember about this movie is Kevin setting up traps, then, well, there's more to it than that. Macaulay Culkin is Kevin McAllister, the youngest member of a huge family whose family accidentally forgot about him while going to France for a Christmas vacation. He is in pure heaven, enjoying just hanging out in this huge mansion all by himself. He's in heaven. That is, until two burglars named Harry and Marv, also known as the Wet Bandits, try to rob his house. So now Kevin has to protect his house while his family tries to get back to him. That's basically the plot. There's a logical inconsistency in this movie. The dad says that the house has automatic locks and timers on the lights, and yet we don't see it in action at all. So did Kevin turn them off, or did they not work or something? But whatever. The real meat of the story, like I said, is not Kevin defeating the Wet Bandits and setting up the traps. It's actually something more subtle. An argument ensues with the mom in which Kevin wishes his whole family would disappear because he feels that no one in his family likes him. This sets the plot in motion as his family accidentally leaves him behind. When the mom realizes she forgot about Kevin, there is a sense of dread among the McAllisters, with the mom wondering, am I really a bad parent? Why would I ever do something like that? You feel for her. You ask yourself, if you were her, what would you do to get back to your son or daughter again? While Kevin is living the good life, there comes a point where loneliness sets in and you realize how important your family is. If that's what they're trying to get across, then I think they did that pretty decently. And then there's Harry and Marv themselves. They're interesting, sort of. They're okay villains. Harry's the planner and Marv is the jokester. I guess they're alright. Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern do a good job, so they're good together, I suppose. There's also the McAllisters' next-door neighbor named Old Man Marley, who Kevin is afraid of at first thanks to his brother Buzz feeding him lies, but Marley ends up being a pretty decent guy. The score was done by the immortal John Williams, who also composed the song Somewhere in My Memory. They're both great pieces of music. I mean, everything John Williams touches is gold. Okay, you want me to talk about what this movie is known for, right? Alright, fine. The traps are cleverly designed. Each of the traps that Kevin sets up are different from one another. John Hughes, who wrote and produced this movie, wove a climax in a way that calls back to the days of the Tom and Jerry and Three Stooges shorts. The setup is clever. Kevin has to set the traps up in a way to where he had to know every single entrance point in the house. He had to know where the Wet Bandits were going to be and when. I gotta say, the reactions that they give are really funny. And I have to admit, I was thoroughly entertained by it. Now I know where Sega got the inspiration for their version of a Home Alone game. The movie has an interesting credit, Raja Gosnell, who was a film editor on good movies like this and Good Morning Vietnam, but then he became a director making movies you wish you forgot about like the live-action Smurfs and Scooby-Doo movies. Yeah, I remember those. The movie actually did become a franchise. It got a few sequels. The second one is set in New York, which I heard is similar to the first one, except it's in a bigger environment. The third one had a completely different family and a completely different set of burglars. And then the others, which we just don't talk about. Is it one of the best Christmas movies ever? To me, no. Is it worth watching? Yes. It's an enjoyably decent holiday film. And that's all there is to it. Number 10. It happened on Fifth Avenue. Okay, you probably have never heard of this, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if you haven't. The plot of this movie is a little complicated, but I'm going to try to explain it to the best of my abilities. Trudy is the daughter of Michael O'Connor, who finds her father's mansion taken by a hobo with a dog, and a guy named Jim. Jim is an ex-GI who was evicted from his apartment earlier in the day. She asks her father, a very wealthy man who owns the mansion that the hobo is now occupying, to pose as a drunk homeless man who has to ask for food and shelter while this hobo is wearing his clothes, smoking his cigars, and living in his mansion. His patience is tested all because his daughter is beginning to fall in love with Jim. Michael is put through what he calls humiliation, as he has to learn to not be selfish, while everyone else enjoys the hobo named McGeever's generosity. This movie, I feel, is criminally underrated because it deals with another theme of the holidays: generosity. It's about what people do to try to be nice to one another, no longer thinking about themselves and thinking about other people. McGeever is allowing other people to live in this huge mansion. Yes, he snuck in it through a hole in the fence, and yes, he is taking advantage of his hospitality, but he wants to share it with other strangers like him. Some may see him as a con artist. Others may see him as a burglar, but McGeever never sees it that way. At some point, Michael's ex-wife shows up, played by Anne Harding, and this is when Michael's patience is really put to the test. Part of the reason why she's there is because Trudy asked her to come over, because, I forgot to mention this, both of them are in the middle of Christmas vacation. I think the reason why you never heard of it was because it came out around the same time as Miracle on 34th Street, but it does air during Turner Classic Movies' annual holiday marathon. The rest of the cast include Victor Moore as McGeever, Charles Rudges as Michael, Gail Storm as Trudy, and Don DeFore as Jim. The last cast member to mention is Alan Hale Jr., son of Alan Hale. It's a little gem that never got the recognition it deserved. There's a quote in this movie that sums up the entire thing. A house is truly what its occupants make it, meaning that if you allow the house to be filled with love, you'll get love in return. And that's why this little film that almost could holds a spot on my list. Number 9. Frosty the Snowman. Okay, I actually was gonna put all the Rankin Bass specials in one entry, but the problem is that I haven't seen all of them. There are ones I'm missing out on, like Little Drummer Boy and Here Comes Peter Cottontail and The Year Without a Santa Claus, so I'm probably just gonna put the ones I've seen the most as individual entries. And by the way, for those of you who don't know who Rankin Bass are, or what Rankin Bass is essentially just their last names, Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass. There just isn't a whole lot to say. There just isn't a whole lot to say about Frosty the Snowman, to be totally honest. Frosty the Snowman is essentially, it literally brings the song to life. It actually follows the storyline of the original song very well, but it does make up its own thing. The additions include Mr. Hinkle, the worst magician ever, that's what they say, who wants his hat back because he threw his hat away and it is now Frosty's. You can tell he didn't think this through very well. And then the kid characters, mainly Karen, who becomes Frosty's friend. The special is told and sung by Jimmy Durante, but it has other comedians who join the party as well, including Jackie Vernon as Frosty, June Foray as Karen, Billy D. Wolfe, and Paul Frees. I actually rewatched it recently, as I do every year, and I actually noticed some things about it that I never noticed the first 20 times I've seen it. And there are things about it that in terms of story, there are problems with it. I'm not kidding, there are problems with the story. Firstly, why doesn't Professor Hinkle get a new hat? I mean, there are clearly more magic hats out there. He's clearly following them and doing all these crazy things just to get this one hat. So why does he need this specific hat at this specific time when he can clearly get a new hat from a magic store? And also, another thing I noticed is that the part where Frosty and Karen gets locked in a greenhouse, I'm sitting there thinking, is it locked from the inside or something? They were able to open it to get inside. I mean, it's not like it's locked from the inside out. Later on, Santa Claus was able to open it just fine. Why couldn't Frosty and Karen open the door if it was never locked in the first place? But Frosty the Snowman is a good special for what it is. I mean, you could basically listen to the song as you're watching the special and you'll notice that what happens in the special is very accurate to what goes on in the original song. Rankin Bass They have never been known for having fantastic animation quality, but this one is hand-drawn animation, not stop motion. Unfortunately, this one is a little bit choppy than other Rankin Bass hand-drawn specials that came out. But if you're able to look past the choppy animation style of Rankin Bass, it's actually a good special. Just like with most of their specials, they're pretty good, if you can look past the choppy animation. There were sequels, but none of them connect with this special in any way. There's Frosty Returns, which even though I do watch it every year, it's not very good at all. The Legend of Frosty the Snowman, I have no memory of whatsoever, outside of the fact that it has Burt Reynolds narrating and Patrick Starr as Frosty. And then we have Frosty and Rudolph's Christmas in July. You know what, just avoid all of them, just stick to this one. Number 8. Santa Claus is coming to town. Is there anything to say about... This thing used to move. This Rankin Bass special is basically the origins of Santa Claus, where he got his red suit from, how he got started in the toy making business, why Christmas is once a year, why he goes down chimneys, etc. Essentially, it explains why Santa is the way he is. Of course, to make it a special, they added stuff like a toy-hating king named Burgermeister Meisterburger. Yes, that is his name. An evil ice wizard named Winter Warlock, voiced by Keenan Wynn, who, through Santa's, I mean Kris Kringle,'s kind generosity, becomes good. A penguin named Topper. And Jessica, a school teacher in Miss Town, who ends up becoming Mrs. Claus. Here's a little trivia. The Burgermeister Meisterburger is actually voiced by the same guy who voiced Boris Bedenoff on Rocky and Bullwinkle. The special was told by Fred Astaire, who's a mailman. I mean, it's fine for what it is. I mean, it's not... Let me explain. I think that there is a misunderstanding when it comes to Santa Claus coming to town. It does a good job of explaining a lot about who Santa Claus is, how he came to be, how he got interested in the toy making business, why he chooses Christmas Eve to deliver all the toys and all that. But there are things about it that I just feel are not explained, because it doesn't explain everything. It only explains the basics, because, you know, this was a special that aired probably on a Saturday where, you know, the younger crowd may be watching, so I do want to kind of explain. There are things about it that they didn't explain. First off, remember in the song how Santa knows when the kids are sleeping and when they're awake? Okay, so in the special, they show Winter Warlock creating a magic snowball that can see everything, thus allowing Santa Claus, Kris Kringle, whatever you want to call him, to see what the kids are up to. If that's the case, then why don't they mention it ever again? Are we just supposed to accept that he can see every child in the world through a magical snowball that a former evil wizard gave him? Also, some things just don't really add up. They mentioned that the reindeer are able to fly thanks to magical corn. How is that supposed to work? I thought the reindeer were just born with that ability, so they had to eat magical corn in order to gain the ability of flight. Why is it that the Crinkle Elves taught Chris how to speak to the animals and learn how to speak their language and learn how to laugh like a seal, and yet it's never brought up again? Yeah, seriously. We see Chris interacting with the animals and learning how to speak their language, and I mean, yeah, he's interacting with Topper, but that's really about it. He leaps onto buildings like a seal, and he's able to laugh like a seal. That's how he got his ho-ho-ho characteristic. But he never uses his Dr. Dolittle abilities in any other Santa Claus related movie ever made. So was Rankin Bass trying to create their own Santa Claus cinematic universe or something, and it just never went anywhere? We do see the Crinkle Elves, and while it's nice that we get to kind of see how they got their start, the way they talk like chipmunks, it's just, twinkle my nose while I see a baby's nose. It's like, ugh. To wrap things up, Mickey Rooney not only voiced Santa Claus in this special, but he also voiced Santa Claus 2 more times, including The Year Without a Santa Claus. If you can look past its flaws, it's actually a good origin story on how Santa Claus came to be, which is more than I can say for something like this.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
Number 7. I think we are all aware of Will Ferrell's form of humor, the sort of adult who acts like a kid. Some of his works I actually like, including Anchorman, Old School, Blades of Glory, and Stranger Than Fiction. But this is the one where his childish attitude helps elevate his character rather than other films he's done where it takes away from the story and sometimes it can become distracting. He plays Buddy, the only human elf in the North Pole. He later finds out that not only is he not biologically an elf, but that his real father, James Caan, put him in an orphanage and he totally forgot that he was ever born. James Caan's on the naughty list. He's been on the naughty list for many years. His wife passed on several years ago, and that his adoptive son is not feeling the holiday spirit. So Buddy goes to New York to find his father. The movie includes another central theme of the holidays: magic, a time when the spirit of the holidays is at its strongest. I also don't think that there is a single movie about one elf in particular as the main character. Well, okay, there was Santa Claus the movie, but the elf in that movie was a supporting character. Here, Buddy is the focus. Also, did I mention that this movie is highly quotable?
I was adopted, but you didn't know I was born. So I'm here now. I found you, Daddy. And guess what? I love you. I love you. I love you.
Okay, people, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Santa's coming to town.
Santa! Oh my God!
The rest of the cast is good. James Caan as Buddy's biological father, Ed Asner as Santa Claus, Zooey Deschanel as the store clerk, who eventually Buddy starts falling in love with, Bob Newhart as Buddy's adopted father, and Mary Steenburgen as James Caan's potential new wife, who is raising her son. The movie is essentially a father-son relationship story done in reverse. Normally, the father is the one trying to reconnect with his son, trying to make up for some of the mistakes that he may have made. Here, the son is trying to reconnect with his biological father. I forgot to mention how it started. Buddy was picked up in Santa's handbag by accident from an orphanage because he saw a teddy bear and went after it. Buddy was most likely put there sometime after his birth mom died because the father wanted no part in that relationship. Yeah, I overanalyze things sometimes. There's a lot to like in Elf. The direction by Jon Favreau, who gave the movie its Christmassy feel. The writing is very witty and childish, but sometimes mature at the same time. The characters are all relatable, but none of them are distracting or annoying. And some scenes take inspiration from the Rankin specials. There's a couple of stop-motion characters thrown in there, including a snowman who looks very similar to Burl Ives' snowman in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Honestly, I remember a Christmas party that happened sometime around 2012 or 2013 in high school, where everybody was gathered up in a classroom and watched this movie. And I can tell you that everyone had a fun time, quoting the movie and having a blast. This movie is such a classic, yet it's not even considered a classic yet, but yet everybody watches this movie every single year. And it really interests me to know that there are people out there who actually care about this movie. I've never known anyone who actually disliked this movie. Okay, I've known at least one or two, but I've never known anyone who actually said, "Hey, did you see Elf? 'Cause I didn't like it." Because it's so well known. Honestly, there's so much I can say about this movie, but that would be spoiling it. It's a movie that has no mention of overblown commercialism. It has the idea of Santa Claus, but it's not cliche or annoying. In fact, it doesn't even focus on Santa Claus that much. It has a pretty decent depiction of the North Pole and the elves, who aren't necessarily the generic-looking elves, but rather different types of elves with different types of personalities. And plus, on top of that, the side characters do have some relevance in the plot. There's a little girl who will become relevant in the story sometime later. The movie kinda has an open-ended ending to where, without giving too much away, there's a lot that happens toward the end, and it sorta asks the question, what did happen? Honestly, there's a lot to love in this movie, and I do encourage some of you to give it a chance. Some of you may not be a fan of Will Ferrell's childlike humor. There is a humanity that comes with this movie. The movie's partly about misfits, but it's also partly a father-son story done in reverse. If you like the idea of misfits being finally accepted, then you'll enjoy this movie. The humor may not be for everyone, but again, it actually elevates Buddy's character of that childlike elf who never actually became an actual elf. Oh, and this movie inspired a Broadway musical. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. It inspired a Broadway Broadway musical. How many Christmas movies can you name that actually got a Broadway musical? Okay, well, there's 2 others for you. So overall, Elvis just so good. You should seriously definitely consider checking it out.